Rain hammered against the windows of a tiny apartment in Chicago. Ethan Cole sat alone in darkness, staring at unpaid bills scattered across the table. The room smelled of cold coffee and exhaustion. His phone buzzed again. Another debt collector. Ethan slowly looked at the city lights outside the window. Once, he dreamed of becoming successful. Now, at 29 years old, he felt completely defeated. 3 months earlier, he had lost his job. A week later, his girlfriend left him. Then came the eviction notice. Everything he built had collapsed. Ethan whispered to himself, "Maybe I'm not meant to win." Thunder shook the sky outside. For the first time in years, Ethan cried, not because he was weak, but because life had broken him piece by piece. Hours passed in silence. At 3:17 a.m., Ethan stood up and walked toward the bathroom mirror. His eyes looked tired, hopeless, lost, but deep inside him, something still burned. A tiny voice whispered, "You can still fight." Ethan splashed cold water on his face. He stared at his reflection. "No one is coming to save you." That sentence changed everything. The next morning, Ethan packed the last of his belongings into an old backpack. He sold his watch for $40. He canceled every distraction in his life. No parties. No excuses, only survival. Ethan rented the cheapest room he could find. The walls were cracked, the mattress was thin, but he promised himself one thing: this is temporary. Every morning, Ethan woke up before sunrise. While the city slept, he worked. He read books about discipline, about business, about mindset. Slowly, his thinking began to change. One day, Ethan found a free online marketing course. He studied for hours every night. His eyes burned from exhaustion, but he refused to stop. Months passed. Most people would have quit. Ethan kept going. He applied for hundreds of jobs. Rejection after rejection filled his inbox. Still, he continued. One snowy evening, Ethan got a message. A small company wanted an interview. His hands shook while reading the email. The interview wasn't perfect, but Ethan spoke honestly, about failure, about rebuilding, about never giving up. 3 days later, the company hired him. The salary was small, but to Ethan, it felt like hope returning. For the next year, Ethan worked harder than everyone else. He stayed late, learned new skills, asked questions, improved every single day. While others complained, Ethan focused. His pain had become fuel. One night, his boss called him into the office. Ethan expected bad news. Instead, his boss smiled. "You've become the strongest person on this team." Ethan stayed silent, because he remembered the nights he almost gave up. Years later, Ethan launched his own business. The beginning was brutal. There were sleepless nights, failed ideas, financial stress, but Ethan had changed. Failure no longer scared him, because he had survived worse. Slowly, the business began to grow, clients increased, money returned, opportunities appeared. One morning, Ethan stood inside his new office building. Sunlight poured through giant glass windows. Employees worked around him. The same man who once lost everything now led an entire company. Ethan looked out over the city skyline, and remembered that tiny apartment, the unpaid bills, the loneliness, the hopeless nights. Then he smiled quietly, because the hardest moments of his life created the strongest version of himself. Sometimes losing everything is the beginning of becoming unstoppable. Never give up. Your story is not over yet.